Welcome, everyone. This is Lisa Colton from Darim Online and C3 Communications. We're thrilled to have you with us here for the first of 5 webinars in this series, generously supported by UJA Federation of New York. We will be talking about maturing your social media practice in your synagogue. I think the vast majority of people registered are from synagogue settings. So we welcome you to share your own experience and to ask any questions. On your control panel for the webinar, you should see both a question place and also a chat box. And you're welcome to pop those open and share with us your own work, great successes, challenges that you've learned from, and questions either for myself or for our presenter today, Brianna, who I will introduce in a few minutes. We have over 200 people registered for this series, which is really fantastic. If you know anyone else who would like to join us for future ones, they're still welcome to register at the same place that you did, and to join us for the webinars over the next several weeks. Shortly after today's webinar, we will be sending out another email that has a link to the recording of this webinar, as well as the slides and links to any follow-up resources and examples of things that we mentioned today. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Our agenda today, I'll give a little bit of context of where this webinar series came from and introduce you to my colleague, Brianna. We'll talk about why storytelling is important, a little bit about visual storytelling on the internet and why it's so powerful and critical for your work today. And of course, be giving you a number of examples of what that visual storytelling looks like in social media, both in congregational settings and otherwise. So a little context for this series. Over the past several years, we've been working closely with UJA Federation of New York and synagogues in the New York area on helping them become more social. So as we began to train congregations around social media, what we found is that it's not just about the technology and pushing the right buttons. It's about really adopting a social posture and learning how to be good socialites in order to build community. So we often say our congregations are warm and welcoming communities, but we don't always design for those relationships and for community. Over the last 2 years, we did a project in New York that really was focused on helping congregations realize that the synagogue is really just the tip of a pyramid. It's the institutional manifestation of a congregation. And in order to have a strong and sustainable synagogue, you really need to understand all of the social layers that build a congregation underneath it. And so as you'll see here, in order to have a strong synagogue, you need a strong congregation. In order to have a strong congregation, you need a strong community. And to have a strong community, you need lots of small group identities and lots of diverse individual relationships. So one of the powerful things about social media, and this will be a theme throughout our 5 webinars, is that social media is social as much as it is media. And to build that social context, we want to be investing in relationships and in shared narrative and identity. We have a lot of context in Jewish tradition of telling stories. And those shared stories are part of what really binds us together. And so today we're going to really be talking about how to take that culture of shared stories and the power of shared narrative and do it in a way that can compete for people's attention in our busy media landscape today, and actually achieve your goals of building community, inviting people into your congregation and engaging them more deeply. So now I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Brianna Kerensky. Brianna is based in Washington, D.C., and has done all sorts of really important nonprofit social media work there for a number of different organizations. She's currently the digital project manager at C3 Communications. And she also teaches digital marketing at General Assembly. Some of you may have come across General Assembly that has offices and classes in lots of major cities around the country. And so she is well-versed and experienced in teaching on this topic and many others. So, Brianna, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. It's really great to meet you and, present with you today. Just a quick review of some goals in terms of visual storytelling that we're gonna, try and achieve today. First, we're gonna learn the value of storytelling overall. We're gonna learn why visual storytelling is important, particularly for nonprofits and faith groups. And we're gonna learn how you can incorporate visual storytelling into your social media. So the goal today is for you guys to leave with some takeaways and some things that you can kind of start doing for your synagogue social media right away without having to, start a huge plan, things that you can just put into action, today or tomorrow. At any point, if you have questions, or comments, please put them in the chat box. Lisa is going to be monitoring that. We'll have lots of opportunities for discussion. All right. So why is storytelling important? Why are we talking about this? Why are we online today? Storytelling is a part of what makes us human. From the beginning of time, we have, used stories and oral history to tell stories of the past, to teach people and educate them and give them, warning and to take heed of the future. And we are trained from birth to listen to stories. We all remember sitting on a colorful carpet in, elementary school listening to a teacher read a book. We love to read. We love to watch movies that have great, captivating stories. Stories suck us in and help us remember very important facts during life. And so using them for, your synagogue is important. You're tapping into the basic human instinct to understand and listen to a story. And most importantly, stories help show. They don't tell. They help us visualize. They help us understand complicated concepts. Why is visual storytelling important and not just, tons and tons of text or, trying to memorize something, that has worked in history, but visual storytelling on the internet is a little bit different. Visual storytelling helps keep people interested. It helps break down complicated subjects. It reinforces what you've just read or heard. And for us, it puts a human face on nonprofit and faith-related issues. And now we're going to walk through each of these items. So number one, these are your enemies on the internet. Babies, cats, puppies, GIFs. The internet is alive and it is noisy, and there are a lot of different things fighting for everyone's attention. And as a faith-based community, we need to rise above that and be heard over adorable babies, and it's really hard. So when you have visuals to add to your storytelling, it helps your content be seen. So long as the internet is full of cats, babies, and GIFs, a wall of text will never keep your audience's attention. There are people that love to read lots and lots of text. I am one of them. I am a nerd. But I'm also distracted by shiny objects like, videos of cats, taking a bath, or videos of babies eating lemons for the first time. We're all like this. And so incorporating visuals into your storytelling elements just helps you be seen and helps keep attention, so people actually read everything you have to say and leave with takeaways and important information. And speaking of that, the internet understands, because the internet is this weird kind of living amalgamism. The internet understands that people value images online, and we value babies and cats and GIFs. And so Facebook has an algorithm, and it's set up to value posts with photos over posts with text. And so when you are posting on Facebook, so like let's just say your synagogue has 2,000 followers on Facebook, when you post something to your synagogue's Facebook wall, it's not going to all 10,000 people. It might go to 3,000 people. And if Facebook sees that it's doing well with those 3,000 people, they'll show it to a few more people that already follow your Facebook page, until maybe you get to all of the people that follow you on Facebook. But they do that because Facebook, the company wants you to keep coming back as a user, and they know you're only going to keep coming back if the content is good, and they don't want to show people bad content. So that's why they kind of test the water, and that they let a post be seen by just a few people, and then if it's doing well, show it to more. And automatically, if your post doesn't have a photo, they're going to show it to very few people because they know that people don't like posts that don't have images. So it's just one of those weird things. To be seen by people on the internet, you do need, visual imagery or video. And for that, also, Facebook knows that we don't like to be lied to. And we only like when text matches a photo. There's been some controversy in recent years that websites would post on Facebook a photo of like Kim Kardashian, and they would be like, you wouldn't believe what happened next. And when you click the link, it was not about the Kardashians. It was about, a shoe sale, something completely unrelated, and they were using Kim Kardashian as a gimmick to get people to visit. So your photos need to match your stories, and you need photos in order to be seen. Facebook knows this, and we need to play that game in order to be seen by different audiences. iMedia Connection is a great website that does a lot of social media analysis, and they've learned that compelling visuals on Facebook can help social posts generate over 90% more views than generic content. So basically, if you want to be seen on social media, you need to have a good photo. There's really no way around it anymore. You can be Shakespeare, but if Shakespeare is trying to post on Facebook without a photo, no one's going to see it. And it's unfortunate, and it's frustrating, and it's a lot more work for us, but it's the game that we have to play in order to succeed online. And it can be fun. Instagram is the same way. Instagram is all about photos, and quality is key. Instagram is kind of like a giant internet scrapbook of photos. This was one of the most popular ones from 2015. Of course, it's Taylor Swift. But again, visual storytelling, and especially for younger audiences that put imagery at the forefront of storytelling, we need to meet them on that ground. And Instagram is kind of that field. And it doesn't always have to be a photograph. It can be text. This is from Central Synagogue in New York. It's the simplest image ever. I could have made this on MS Paint in 10 minutes. But it's powerful, and people connect with it, because if you saw this on Yom Kippur, or a few days later, you would totally relate, and it helps you understand what other people are thinking about on Yom Kippur and at the same time as you. And so storytelling, for that matter, doesn't also need to be photographs, but it's imagery, and it's things that capture our imagination, make us think, help us relate, and help us understand. Videos. Videos also fit into storytelling. I know this can be a more difficult thing to capture, especially when you're a synagogue that doesn't have a video team, like a communications agency. But online video now accounts for 50% of mobile traffic, and it's growing. And there are some great organizations out there that are taking advantage of this. So there's a link at the bottom of this image here, so you can watch it later. But Ikar made a very brief video called "Pause Before You Post," and it's a woman explaining Lashon Hara, and how it relates to negative internet comments and trolling. And basically, it's the simplest thing. It's one woman holding up different signs that explain why negative posts are bad and how it relates to Judaism. And it's very simple. She got the idea from a Bob Dylan video. And yeah, it's important, and it gets people to understand and relate their faith to modern conversations. There's also another great organization out there that puts out videos called Godcast, that they use very simple animation to explain Jewish life cycle events, and they're they're at the forefront of faith and video, because that's how people understand and accept information now.
Brianna, can I just jump in? This is Lisa.
Oh, yes,
I think the
absolutely.
examples that you gave
Mhm.
are really great. And what I want to add to it is to remind everybody that you can be a curator of content. You don't actually have to create all of it yourself. Now, of course, you're going to want to have imagery that's of your people and relevant to your community. But something like the pause before you post video is something you can also be sharing in your social media channels. And Godcast videos are also things that you can be sharing in your social media channels, that creating awesome visual assets is only one part of how you can fill your channels. Curating them is also another great opportunity.
Absolutely. And to add to that, again, the Facebook monster loves that, and that Facebook wants you to share content and not create it in a vacuum because they know more people will look at it. More people will look at a Godcast post if I share it from my Facebook. All of my friends that maybe don't follow Godcast will see it and get interested and have more discussions than just Godcast posting it and hoping someone is interested and sees. So Facebook upgrades content that is shared, and so they want you to share content, and it's best practice for your organization to share Facebook and Instagram content and Twitter as well. And so when I go out and I do social media for like a nonprofit organization, I schedule time to share things that I'll scan the internet for 20 minutes and look for a New York Times article or a Facebook post from another nonprofit that says something that would be of interest to my audience, and I share it because it helps more people see your content, and it also relates you to the organization that originally published it. So it looks really good. I worked for an environmental nonprofit, and if the New York Times wrote an article about an issue we were working on, if I shared that on my Facebook, it made my organization look more credible because our issues were being mentioned in the New York Times. It's a really great thing to share. Sharing content, or sometimes we call it recycling, it saves you time and energy and resources because you don't have to create a ton of original stuff. And it's also just good social media best practices. So thank you, Lisa, for bringing that up. I really appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions so far? Nope.
There
All
are a
right.
handful of questions
Oh,
that have
yeah.
been coming in that I've been answering in the
Oh, lovely.
questions tab. Just
Mhm.
some details about things that you've mentioned and links that I'm sharing in the chat. Um, let's see. Mandy asks, is there a benefit for a congregation to have Instagram? Not the youth program or the religious school, but the congregation as a whole. And Mandy, I think that's a great question. My answer, and Brianna, I would love to hear what you have to say in a
Yeah.
moment as well, is yes. Actually, the statistics about Instagram use are exploding, and especially in younger demographics, but not limited to younger demographics. Among teens and 20s, Instagram is the number one tool that's used, and Facebook is like barely on the map at all. So, especially if you're trying to be engaging younger demographics, I would say Instagram is very important. It's also incredibly fun and in many ways really easy. There are a lot of people who take Instagram as a creative challenge, and we'll send out in our follow-up email some links to Instagram accounts that are worth um, looking at for their visual beauty. But Instagram is really kind of like a photo essay. And so, whether it's individual images or the whole collection of images, I think it says actually quite a bit about your congregation, um, and is a great place to be. Yeah, Brianna, do you have anything to add to that?
Absolutely. And when it comes to younger audiences, one day they become the older audience. And so the key is to get them in now. And if doing Instagram, it's so easy. You don't have to write a lot. You just have to take a photo. And if the photo's not great, you can put a filter on it. I do it all the time because I'm a terrible photographer. Quality is key in that the content of the photo is good. Um, and I think, it's a great, easy, free resource. It's just one more way to get people interested and show the life in your synagogue's community. I think it's a great resource. Even if people are Googling you and wondering like what your synagogue is about, if they happen upon your Instagram account and just see photos, it's like a collage of, people being involved and engaged and having a great time. It really doesn't hurt. It's
Great.
free advertising.
Couple more questions. This is awesome,
Mm-hmm.
you guys. Thank you for the questions that are pouring in.
Mm-hmm.
Marjorie asks, how can you employ social media without alienating older members?
Um, okay, so the fastest growing demographic on Facebook are people over the age of 65. And that's because they want to see photos of their grandkids. Um, and so I think being on Facebook for older audiences is actually super important. I think it is 100% necessary to be on Facebook for older audiences. Older audiences are growing on Facebook than younger audiences. They're moving to Instagram. Um, and I think, keeping things simple, like you don't have to ask people to register for events on social media. Sometimes that might be too complicated, but showing, like I said, the life of your community and that it's a great place to be um, is always great. And your older audiences can influence the younger audiences. Why aren't you going to services? Look at these photos from services. They're so nice. Why aren't you there? We've all been there in some way, shape, or form. Um, I think, doing that, and not every opportunity has to be a selfie opportunity. You don't need to get your older community to like take selfies or do too much on social media, but they'll see it. And providing them something to see is really important. It will get them excited and happy and sharing it with their families.
Yeah. So a couple other logistical questions came up
Hmm.
here about using Instagram just practically kind of on the ground.
Hmm.
One, if you have Instagram as an app on your phone and you have a personal Instagram account, I don't believe you can toggle between accounts like you
No.
can, for example, in the Twitter app. You can have multiple Twitter accounts and toggle between them. So, do you have any recommendations for staff who are the ones kind of in charge of taking the images or managing an Instagram account, and how would you do that practically? Do you need a second
Usually,
device?
no, not a second device, but I'll log out of Instagram and then log back in as my organization. Or Instagram doesn't always have to be like as real time. So if there's an event, I'll take photos and then go back to my desk and load them. But yeah, Instagram, usually at my organizations, we've just shared the username and password. Um, and that seems to be the easiest. So like if I'm not going to an event, but I know one of my coworkers is, I'll give them the username and password to the Instagram account for the day. And they'll log onto it from their phone.
Great.
It is annoying. Like Facebook lets you toggle, Twitter lets you toggle, Instagram doesn't, and I honestly would be very surprised if they don't change that soon. That's been a logistical question that I've been dealing with forever.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of questions coming in about
Hmm.
usage rights. One about making sure that you have permission from members to be using their images or likeness or as part of an event. And also one
Hmm.
about using other images like Google Images or other stuff that you might find online. I'll take the first question. I'll throw the second one to you,
Okay, great.
Brianna. Um, the question about permission of members or people attending your events is a really important one. And this has been coming up honestly for years. But as we talk about visual storytelling and you're working on capturing great images, it definitely is a real one. First is kind of the legal part of it. which I recommend that people update their membership forms, their religious school registration forms, event RSVPs, any of that, um, to say, just a blanket statement that we will be taking photos and video in these places. And if you want, allow people to opt out of it. But you're kind of crossing that off from the get-go. And if you have it in all of those normal materials, you won't have to kind of do an extra step. The second thing is not necessarily the kind of dotting your I's and crossing your T's legal part, but it's more about education and perception and culture. So that is, for example, putting a sign on the door or saying from the front of the room, we love sharing pictures of our community. So, the rest of the congregation can see what a great time you all are having. So we'll be posting a few photos from tonight's event on our Facebook and Instagram feeds. If you don't want to be photographed, please go tell Brianna that you prefer not to, so that it becomes part of the culture that this is normative. And I'd say over the past 5 years, that's shifted. That the acceptance of that as normative has shifted somewhat. The other piece, and I think this applies particularly to Instagram, but elsewhere as well, is that you can tell a wonderful story visually without people's faces. So I worked with a Jewish day school over the past couple of years that was making an effort in increasing the quality of their social media, but they couldn't put photos of children in their school. So what are you going to do? And they got incredibly creative with, a hand holding a paintbrush, or two kids from the back with their arms around each other, or other kinds of images that are zoomed in and actually say quite a bit without using anyone's faces. In fact, sometimes a picture of three people smiling at the camera at an event is incredibly boring because it's posed. It doesn't actually tell much of a story, except these three people were attending this event. So I encourage you to get creative with your images, and in many cases that will help you get past some of the issues of people who don't want to be appearing in your photos. Brianna, do you want to speak a little bit to finding images on Google Images or elsewhere, and what are the
Sure.
rules about using that?
Okay. Number one, if it's for educational purposes, it is fair game. So you can use almost anything from the internet for free if it's for educational purposes. Um, so that's my favorite thing in the world. But otherwise, like if you're directly sharing from someone's social media account, so if um, you know there was someone on Facebook that took a great photo of your event and you wanted to just hit the share button, you can do that. Not a problem. Um, they are giving you permission to do that by putting it on social media, hitting the share button, because it also immediately credits them. Um, so it says, Brianna shared this from, Lisa's Facebook wall. Um, when it comes to Google Images, that's a lot harder. I could go on all day about fair use in images, and actually at General Assembly I bring in a professional that has a professional graphic designer that has years of twisting and turning around legal networks for fair use in images. Um, as a synagogue, you're usually pretty safe. Um, no one is going to necessarily like sue you for using a photo from Google image search. Usually if you're a nonprofit or a brand, anyone looking to make money off of imagery, then you're more likely to get in trouble. But for me, most of the time when I get images that are not for educational use, I get them from Flickr, where you can make sure that things have a Creative Commons license, or Morguefile, which I can share the link for that after this presentation, which is a site that people upload their photographs, and they immediately, when they upload them, they are implicitly giving permission for you to use them any way you want on the internet. And if there are any limitations, they're front and center and very clear. So it might say, like, you can use this, but you have to credit me. You can use this, but it can't be in the, for a product, to sell a product. You can't make money off of my photo. But if you want it on a flyer for people to sign up for the Purim Carnival, like that's fine. Um, Google Image, I would say I tend not to use it um, for non-educational purposes, just because a lot of people don't even realize that like it aggregates like every image on the internet. And so a lot of people are uploading things that don't even realize they're getting saved in Google Image, and they might not give you permission to use it. So I usually just look at Creative Commons sites, Flickr, Morgfile, things that clearly have the licensing available.
Yeah, and in Google Images, you can also choose usage rights. So
Hmm.
you can do a search there, and then in the advanced search, I think you can go in and see the rights.
Yeah.
And I would strongly suggest, limiting yourself to those that are open to be shared. And you're right, the Flickr and anything that has Creative Commons on it
Hmm.
is safe. So it's a thoughtful question, and I encourage you to be thoughtful about what people have put out there and the intention of sharing it. So thank you. I know we have a lot of content to cover,
Yeah,
so Brianna,
let's.
I will send you onward, and if people have
Great.
questions in the control panel in the chat or questions, I'm happy to answer them there as well.
Yeah, everybody's had great questions. Thank you guys so much. Okay, so moving on, how visual storytelling can break down complicated topics. And this is like data visualization and taking really wonky things and making them into images, and it helps people understand. So this is from, the famous like Pew Research report that came out a little while ago about a portrait of Jewish Americans and, what, how we all see ourselves as Jews in the United States. It's a great report, but I don't think very many of us looked beyond the charts because the charts are the quickest way to absorb all of this rather than reading like a 40 to 50 page white paper. So if you have data that you want to get across, um, data visualization is definitely the way to go. It really does help people understand what you're talking about and immediately get it and leave learning something. Um, so would you rather read a report or look at pretty pictures? And yes, sometimes you have to do a report. Like we have to put out annual reports. Um, we have to publish these things that could be very wonky or complicated or long, but including visuals helps people keep their attention and understand what you're talking about. It just really is helpful, and it makes storytelling fun. So this is a chart. I used to work for an environmental and food safety group called Food and Water Watch, and we did a report on food monopolies and how like four corporations control all of the major brands in the United States. And we did write an 80-page report. But the most popular thing that came out of that report were these charts that we used food to explain how corporations control the supermarket. And so my favorite chart out of all of these is the bagel at the bottom. Definitely the waffle and the bagel to help explain how these basic, these brands control everything that we eat. And it just helps you understand things and in a way that reading it won't. Um, and the big thing is, are you better at remembering names or faces? Online, we are all better at remembering faces. Faces compel us to read longer stories and stay with us when we move on to the next article, Facebook post, or cat video. Um, so it's one thing like you can't always include someone's face. It's not always possible. You don't always have permission, um, or you're not always able to get a photo. It happens. But including a photograph of a person or something related to them helps people remember. We all remember that National Geographic cover of the woman from Afghan with the bright green eyes. We remember her face, and she's going to be with us for a very long time. And we wouldn't remember her story or anything if we didn't remember her face. And that's what I always think about when I think of visual storytelling and remembering someone's face is her. But including some kind of visual token to accompany a story about a person helps people remember who the person is. And so this is an example from Humans of New York. The photographer went to Turkey and interviewed Syrian refugees, and she was probably the most famous one of the most famous ones that he interviewed. Her name is Anna or Anya, and she is a Syrian refugee who just wanted to move to the United States and go to college. Her mom, and her dog. And her photo, when this story came out, was everywhere. And her photos were powerful and helped people read a lot of text. It compelled people to read things longer than what they normally would read on the internet, especially in a Facebook post. This was 3 of 11 if you look at the top. He did 11 Facebook posts about her. Normally, no one would stick around for that long, but people were compelled because of these photos of her and her dog and her family, and it kind of compelled you to keep reading her very painful yet inspiring story and take action. It was fantastic. But most importantly, visual storytelling illustrates the community and values of your synagogue. Visual storytelling helps show that synagogues are not just a building and organizations are not just a logo, and that we, behind that are real people who care about their community and want to make a difference and want to meet new people and be engaged and do new things, and that it's a great place to be in, a great community to be in. So this is an example from Congregation Beth Elohim, that this was right after Hurricane Sandy, and that they were collecting supplies for people who had been displaced. This is a really powerful photo, and it tells you a lot about the synagogue and their community and what's important to them. Visual storytelling can do all of this. It's one thing to read an article, it's another thing to see a photo. It's powerful and it stays with you. And when it comes to social programming, visuals prove that your community is a place where people are active and serves as an invitation to be engaged. It's one thing to say, like, our students, from the youth group helped out with Habitat for Humanity this weekend, but to show, real teenagers, getting involved and getting their hands dirty is another. Like I said, it helps people process the information, understand it, and get engaged. On the internet, we are inherently followers. People don't really want to be the first to sign up for something. And when you show photos of your programming, it helps people understand, like, these are events that people want to sign up for, and the synagogue is a place where people congregate and are happy. And so if I go to these events and go to this congregation, I will be happy as well because I will be with these happy people. So it's just visual proof, and it tells a story and it helps people understand who your synagogue is. So how can you incorporate visual storytelling into your work? So here are some actual takeaways so that you can get started, today if you want to. That would be great. That would make me very happy. So number one, when you're talking about people, show the people. Like I said, this is not always possible. Not everyone wants their photo taken. I've had things happen that someone was like, I was like, oh, can you email me a photo? And they're like, oh, I'll FedEx it to you, and I never got it. Or the photo, you get the photo of the person finally, and it's horrible. It's really dark and grainy, and there's a finger over the lens. It happens. It's a pain. Sometimes you just don't have a photo. But if you can have another image, an illustration, or a photograph of something that helps represent the person, maybe if they helped clean up a synagogue, have a picture of the synagogue. If they, helped people with Hurricane Sandy relief, have photos of how they benefited that community. Anything to help people have some kind of visual connection to the story. It will help them process the information you're trying to tell them. It'll help them remember, and when they walk away, they leave with a positive impression. Anything like that is really helpful. Use photos that can thrive on their own and don't need to be explained. So a lot of times, photos will often become, by the magic of the internet, separated from the story. It happens, and I just recommend, have photos that can stand on their own, or some kind of visual that looks really good and it doesn't make zero sense without, context. So, that photo of the synagogue and doing Hurricane Sandy relief, that can absolutely stand on its own. It doesn't need text. People see it and are moved immediately by it. And then this is a big one that I want to talk about for a little bit, which is Facebook's 80/20 rule. This is another social media best practices thing, and how we said that Facebook, the Facebook monster is happy when you give it photos and images, and you need to keep the Facebook monster happy so that the Facebook monster shares your content with everybody else on the internet. It's just how it works, and we have to play by the rules. But Facebook does not like when people put a lot of text over an image. So this is like a great chart that helps explain it. So if you think if you have a photo and you put text over it to sign up for an event or come to services or donate to a charity, Facebook reads that text and it thinks that you are trying to get away with putting more text in by putting it over a photo, and it recognizes that and will downgrade a photo. And so the rule of thumb right now is 80% photo, 20% text. And that especially goes if you try and ever use any of your photographs for advertising on social media. So if you're going to buy Facebook ads to encourage people to register for an event or to volunteer, Facebook will not let you use photos that have more than 20% text on them. And that includes even, it's crazy, like text that could appear on a camper's t-shirt. So Facebook will read all of this, and if you put it in like the ad manager, it will actually kind of put your image in this kind of graph layout that it has on the screenshot, and it will show you where there's too much text. So in ads and on just your general Facebook wall, minimal text on your photos.
Brianna, can I ask you a question about that? Because
yes, absolutely.
I totally understand why Facebook does this for ads, and it's amazing how smart the system can be. And at the same time,
it is terrifying, but I love it. Yeah.
At the same time, I've seen people have a lot of success by having people, for example, hold up a sign in a photograph where there's something written on the sign. Or like Rabbi Sharon Browse's The Pause Before You Post video from Ikar, where she has text in her hand, for example. I'm wondering if you can just kind of compare and contrast for us, on the one hand, being creative about using text in photos, like holding up a sign that will grab people's attention, right? People are more likely to read the text on a sign in a photograph than text that's posted as a status update. Kind of balance that with this 80/20 rule that you're talking about, and that Facebook could potentially downgrade it. And I guess I'll just say, like, let's leave ads off to the side, just regular posts. And then also, I assume that this 80/20 rule only applies to Facebook. And if you're doing photos that have text in them on Instagram or something, that's like a whole different ballgame.
Yes. Instagram, totally fine. Facebook, because Instagram shows you everything. So if you post, it goes to everyone. Facebook is the one that is limiting because they want people to return, and so that they only show you like the cream of the crop of content. So when it comes to video, text is totally fine, especially now that more and more people are watching videos on Facebook. Text is fine in videos because a lot of people watch videos muted. If you are on the train and you're playing on your phone and you see a video, you often end up watching it kind of muted. And Facebook understands this, and it's also great for people who are hearing impaired. So they give you lots of subtitling options, and you're encouraged to subtitle your videos if there's audio with words in it. So in video, text is totally fine. My rule of thumb for Facebook photos and text is, if I have students that are volunteering at a car wash and they're holding up signs with text, and it's just a great photo, you know, their sign saying, come to the car wash, benefits, breast cancer action or benefits our synagogue. Like that's fine. What they're really trying to crack down on are people going into Photoshop and adding text, um, because it isn't good in terms of like visual imagery and photography. It crowds photos. People haven't been doing the best job with it, and so Facebook is cracking down.
Hmm.
And the whole point is to promote videos or photos, and when you're adding text to it, you're promoting text. Um, so, if you have a great photo and it has people holding signs, go for it. If you're trying to use the photo as a way to promote text, and like photoshopping or adding text over the photo, that's where Facebook will really ding you.
Okay, great.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Do we have any other questions about this from the audience?
Let's see. So Melissa had asked about photos that have text like the "So Hungry" image from
Yeah.
Central Synagogue, and I think we covered that Instagram is you're good to go,
Yeah.
and it's really Facebook that cares about this 80/20 rule, especially
Yeah.
when you're trying to promote or do in ads.
Hmm. And
Melissa, if you
yeah,
have more questions about that, feel free to post a more detailed question and I'll answer it as well. Go ahead,
it
Brianna.
does get confusing, especially because Facebook owns Instagram. Um, so it's one game with two sets of rules
Yeah.
almost. Yeah, and I sometimes like, you know, it's Facebook is not going to like block you or ruin your content forever. If you have something great with text, sometime and like it's going to go gangbusters, sometimes it's okay to break the rules. These are not hard and fast rules. An example, when I worked at this food safety and environmental nonprofit, we ended up having a great conversation with Bonnie Raitt, and she gave a quote about how horrible fracking was, and we were an anti-fracking nonprofit. So we took a photo that we had permission from Bonnie Raitt's team. We had a photo of Bonnie Raitt, and we put this quote on top of it about how horrible fracking was, because we knew our audience would go crazy, like Facebook be damned. If we were like, we got Bonnie Raitt to talk to us and say these great things about our issue, and it was our most successful post of 2015.
Mm.
Yeah, that will never happen again. I'll never get the chance to talk to Bonnie Raitt again. So sometimes you just have to like weigh the risks. Um, and Facebook putting text on a photo, you're not going to get blacklisted from Facebook forever. It's not like your content will never be seen again. But if you think you have something that is just going to like be able to break Facebook's text rule and do amazing and go gangbusters with your audience, if you feel that confident, like I felt with like a Bonnie Raitt quote, like go for it.
It's worth it. Yeah.
It's worth it.
So one other question that came up is about sharing content automatically from Instagram to Facebook. So you can connect to those two accounts, and then
Hmm.
anything you post on Instagram is automatically showing up on Facebook too. Do you have any thoughts or recommendations about that, especially for small local nonprofits that
Hmm.
have limited staff to be managing multiple accounts?
Yeah. I think it's great. I do that with my personal accounts because I do it with my personal accounts because I'm lazy. I think you should do it because you have two different audiences between Facebook and Instagram. And that, like we've discussed, Facebook has an older audience. And the people that follow you on Facebook are not necessarily the same people that follow you on Instagram. I think it's completely okay. And Facebook encourages it because they own Instagram. It's one of those it's a weird thing that I think if it saves you time, because then you don't have to worry about creating original content for two different platforms, especially if you want to promote the same event on two different platforms, or the same, program or content on two different platforms. I think it's completely okay um, to double post. My one recommendation is just not to do that between Facebook and Twitter, but Facebook and Instagram, absolutely.
Yeah, and the thing that I really like about Instagram actually is it asks you if you want to cross promote every single post. So I remember a
Hmm.
couple years ago when Twitter was kind of on the rise, you could connect Twitter and Facebook, but it was every single thing you put on Twitter automatically went to Facebook,
Hmm.
and it's not always appropriate. Um, because there are different cultures in different
Yes.
spaces. But Instagram, every single time you post something to Instagram, it allows you to say, yeah, I also want to put this on Twitter and I also want to put this on Facebook. So you can be selective about it. And I would agree, lots of things can crisscross those platforms really successfully. But you
Hmm.
will have some overlap of audiences in both of those spaces, and you don't want to be entirely
Yeah.
redundant and overwhelm people. And it may be for an event, you post a lot of stuff on Instagram from an event, but you don't want to like completely overtake people's news feeds in Facebook. So maybe you choose one or two to put over on Facebook,
Mhm.
even though you have 7 or 10 on Instagram. Good
Yeah.
question. Thank you, Melissa.
Mhm. And a thought with that is also you can post all of them to Instagram, and then if you're going to have, 7 to 10 photos from an event, and then maybe afterwards put them in an album on Facebook.
Right.
So
Yes.
then you can just do it all in one post. Yeah, there are not too many like hard and fast rules, and it ends up coming down to like your personal preferences, how your audience reacts to content, um, and your capacity. So yeah, everything we're saying here, suggestions, find the way that makes them work the best for you. Yeah,
Great.
so we're almost there. Okay, so moving on, we're almost done, and then I think we'll have time for a few more questions. Um, so just a reminder, show, don't tell. That is what visual storytelling is all about. And it helps people, it activates their imagination, it gets them excited, it gets them engaged, it helps them understand what you're talking about by breaking down wonky topics. Um, and yeah, and it gives people a slice of life into your community and what's going on at your synagogue. Oh, gosh, sorry, I thought I had more slides. Do we have any more questions?
We sure do. My
Woohoo!
goodness. We have a curious crowd,
Mhm.
which I love.
Yes.
Um, let's see. Iris asks, Buffer or Hootsuite? Can you use tools like that to coordinate your visual storytelling on multiple platforms?
Absolutely. Hootsuite, most of their best features you now have to pay for, which is really unfortunate. Um, but Buffer is the last I used, it was free. But yeah, I think they are great for helping you see everything that's happening on all of your platforms at the same time and get you organized. I think they're fantastic, and I highly recommend them. It makes it easier for you and anyone else that you might be sharing responsibilities with.
And I will put links to those in our follow-up email. A bunch of
Yes.
people were like, Buffer or what? What's that other thing called? So I will share
Mhm.
those as well. They're kind of dashboards that help you manage multiple accounts, which is great. A couple people have asked about having multiple content managers. So for Instagram in particular, but
Mhm.
maybe in general for social media. Any words of advice about how to help multiple storytellers and content creators be coordinated or
Mhm.
consistent or maybe not consistent quite intentionally to tell different
Mhm.
stories?
I think like the big thing is just planning in advance, and just making sure. So I've definitely worked at organizations that 7 to 11 people managed the Facebook account, and we communicated every day and told each other what time we were going to share posts, because what would frequently happen if we didn't do that was, we maybe have no Facebook posts for 3 or 4 days, and then suddenly we would have 11 Facebook posts in one day, and we would all publish them by accident at like the same time. And it was a train wreck. So if you're going to have, I'm all for having, multiple people, and sharing the load and sharing ideas, and different perspectives on social media. I'm 100% for that if that's something that you want to do. Just be sure that you're communicating and letting each other know in advance what you're posting, when you're posting, and then maybe having some guidelines for how you describe things. So the thing off the top of my head is that everybody spells Hanukkah differently. So maybe have everybody be on the same page, how you're going to spell things or phrase things.
Great. Um, I've also seen people do a really great job differentiating between the kinds of content. So, for
Hmm.
example, you might want a couple photos of like people at an event or in a building, but think about what are the other categories of things that are visually interesting. So
Hmm.
maybe it's things that are happening outside of the building, like we saw an image in your slides a few minutes ago of people at a Habitat for Humanity, or helping in a service project. Um, I've also seen people do like a "Did you know" series, or doing close-ups of really unique things in a building, like a little bit of stained glass, or some old artifact, or
Hmm.
um, I don't know, something just kind of quirky or interesting or new. Um,
Yeah.
I saw one congregation that recently put up signs for transgender bathrooms. And like, that's a fantastic image. Take a picture of a sign and it says a tremendous amount about who you are and what your values are. So if you have multiple people, they can have, kind of a different sort of magnifying glass looking into your community, and being and capturing images that tell really different stories as well. So
Absolutely.
we're approaching the end of our time together. I'm sorry to say, because the questions just keep coming in. Um, there are some questions about blogs, about how many times to post, about coordinating content, and all of that. And what I will say is that we have 4 more webinars, and we've chosen a variety of topics to kind of tackle a lot of these issues. This is not intended to be a 101 introductory kind of series. So if you have questions that we don't address in these sessions, please feel free to email me. You can just reply to the login email that you got for today, and I'm happy to direct you to other resources, either recorded webinars or articles. We will be sending out a recording of this webinar along with a link to see the slides, and links to a number of the things that were mentioned, and some other accounts and articles to look at to help advance your
Hmm.
learning. And in our upcoming series, there were a number of questions about kind of content planning. And on March 8th, we have a session on content strategy and planning. And that's a lot about having a consistent brand and how you bring that brand to life through your social media. And I will make sure that in that session, we do definitely address some of these coordination and content calendaring and planning kinds of questions as well, because it seems like there's a real
Hmm.
need. Brianna, thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing your
Thank you.
expertise with us. Thank you to the 100+ people who were live on our webinar today, and to the other 100+ who I know are going to listen to the recording. We're thrilled to have you here. And thank you so much to Synergy and UJ Federation of New York for their support of this webinar series. Our next session is February 25th on communicating for social, where we will really punctuate what we mean by designing for relationships, and how to really use your social media channels to build that sense of relationship and community in your congregation. Thank you all so much for being here today, and we'll
Thank you
see you
so
next
much.
time. Take care.